I'm not the kind of guy who buys haunted stuff for fun. I'm not into paranormal crap, never have been. But about 2 months ago, I found myself at this dusty little flea market outside of town. I was just killing time, looking through old tools, comic books, random junk, when I saw it. An old tabletop radio, wooden with rounded edges, the kind you'd see in a black and white movie. It had a big dial with gold numbers and a glass face, though the glass was cracked right down the middle. The power cord looked new. Someone had clearly tried to restore it. The old man selling it told me it still worked, mostly, and that it had a personality. I figured he was just hyping it up to get a sale. For $20, I bought it and carried it home. It worked fine at first. AM stations, fuzzy music, old talk shows late at night. It was kind of charming. But then, about a week in, things started to get weird. The first thing I noticed was how often it would turn on by itself. I'd be watching TV in the other room and hear the faint hiss of static coming from my bedroom. At first, I thought maybe I'd left it on, but I started checking. Nope. Definitely turning itself on. One night around 2:30 a.m., I heard it again. I was half asleep, but something about the sound made me get up. The static was different this time. Quieter, almost pulsing. When I got close, I thought I heard it whispering. It was so faint that I had to lean right over the radio. That's when I swear I heard it say, "You're listening." The voice was thin and raspy, almost like it was speaking from another room. I backed away, thinking I'd just imagined it. I switched the radio off and tried to go back to sleep. The next night, it happened again. This time the whispers were clearer. I couldn't make out every word, but I caught fragments. Watching. Behind you. I felt a shiver run through me. I spun around. Nothing was there. For the next few nights, I didn't touch it. I left it unplugged. But even unplugged, I'd wake up in the middle of the night and swear I heard faint static in the dark. 2 weeks after buying it, I woke to a loud burst of white noise coming from my bedroom. My heart was pounding before I even got out of bed. When I stepped into my room, the dial on the radio was moving on its own, ticking back and forth like someone was tuning it. Through the static, I heard my name, clear as day. "Daniel!" I froze. It said it again, longer this time. "Daniel! It's closer!" That was enough for me. I grabbed the radio, yanked the cord from the wall, and carried it to the dumpster behind my apartment. I didn't even look back. That night I slept better. Or at least I did until 3:07 a.m., when the static came back. It was coming from my living room. My stomach dropped as I stepped out of bed. Sitting on my coffee table, soaking wet like it had been left out in the rain, was the radio. The wood was warped, dripping water onto the floor. The dial was turning slowly. "You can't leave it," the voice said. I backed away. Every instinct told me to run, but my legs felt heavy, like moving through water. "Coming through. Soon," it whispered. I ran out of the apartment and didn't come back until the sun came up. When I returned, the radio was gone. A few days passed without incident. I told myself I'd imagined it all. Sleep deprivation, stress, whatever. Then last night it came back. I was lying in bed when I heard the static again. But this time, it wasn't coming from the radio. It was coming from inside my room. It was faint at first, then louder, until I could hear multiple voices whispering at once, overlapping, repeating my name over and over. The sound seemed to come from every direction. I grabbed my phone to turn on the flashlight. That's when I noticed it. The shadows in my room weren't right. They were moving, pulsing, shifting toward me in tiny jerks. And with each movement, the static grew sharper. The loudest voice whispered, "It's here." The shadows rushed forward. I woke up this morning on my floor. I don't remember falling asleep or blacking out or whatever happened. But the radio was back in its spot on my nightstand, bone dry, like it had never been gone. The dial was turned to a dead station, and it was silent. For now, it's 1:12 a.m. as I'm writing this. The static just started again. And this time, I swear I can hear breathing. I woke up in the middle of the night, and everything was wrong. It wasn't my apartment. The ceiling was too high, the air too heavy, and the sheets didn't smell like mine. The mattress felt lumpy and sunken in the middle, like hundreds of people had slept in it before me. I sat up, trying to shake off the fog in my head. But that's when I noticed it. There were no windows. I couldn't remember going to bed. Hell, I couldn't even remember the last thing I'd been doing before I woke up here. The only light came from a dim, yellow bulb in the corner, swaying gently as if there were a breeze, but the air was perfectly still. I swung my legs over the side of the bed and froze. The floor wasn't wood or carpet. It was dirt. There was a door on the far wall, old and warped, with peeling paint. I went to open it, but the handle was ice cold, and when I turned it, the door didn't move. No creak, no rattle. It was like it was part of the wall. I looked back at the bed and felt my stomach drop. The sheets were different. Now they were gray and frayed, covered in stains I couldn't identify. I hadn't heard anything move, but it was definitely not the same bed I'd just gotten out of. That was when I noticed the breathing. It was faint at first, slow and steady, but it was coming from under the bed. My skin prickled as I crouched down to look, my brain screaming at me not to. There was something there. Not a person. At least, not anymore. It was pale, hairless, with a face stretched too tight over its skull. Its mouth hung open, lips split, revealing teeth worn down to stumps. Its eyes were milky and wide, staring right at me. The breathing stopped. Then it began crawling out. I scrambled backward, hitting the wall. The thing dragged itself into the light, its movements jerky, like its joints didn't bend the right way. It stopped halfway out from under the bed and tilted its head, as if studying me. That's when I noticed something worse. There was another bed behind it, identical to mine. And on that bed was me. I couldn't move. My double lay there, eyes closed, chest rising and falling, slowly. The creature's head turned from me to the copy, then back again, like it was deciding. It reached out with one long, trembling hand and began pulling itself toward my double. My voice finally broke free. "Hey!" I shouted, lunging forward. The thing snapped its head toward me so fast I heard the bones crack. Then, without warning, it slid back under the bed, dragging my double with it. The sheets fell flat, and the breathing stopped. I tore at the mattress, trying to flip it, but the bed wouldn't budge. It was like it was bolted to the ground, or maybe part of it. My hands came away covered in dust and something sticky. Then I heard the door click. It was open now. I ran for it, not caring where it led. The hallway outside was long, narrow, and lined with doors, each one identical to mine. The air smelled of mildew and rot, and the only light came from bare bulbs swinging from the ceiling, each one flickering at a different pace. As I walked, I noticed that some of the doors were slightly open. I tried to look inside the first one. There was another bed, and another person sleeping in it. In the second room, the bed was empty, but the dirt under it was disturbed, like something had just crawled away. A noise behind me made my blood run cold. It was the sound of something heavy being dragged along the dirt floor. I started moving faster, glancing back down the hallway. At the far end, half hidden in shadow, something was crawling toward me. Its limbs were too long, its head tilted to one side, and I could hear its wet, ragged breathing. I broke into a sprint, trying door after door, but they were all locked. The dragging sound grew louder, faster, like it was gaining on me. Finally, one door swung open into pitch blackness. I didn't care. I ran inside and slammed it shut, pressing my back to it. There was silence for a moment. Then, the bed in the room shifted. I turned slowly. The bed was the same as the others, lumpy and stained, but the sheets were moving, as if something underneath was breathing. My body screamed at me to stay by the door, but I took a step forward. The sheets slid back on their own. It was me again, lying there, eyes closed, exactly as I'd seen before. Only this time, its mouth was smiling. I backed toward the door, but when I reached for the handle, there was nothing there. Just more wall. The air grew heavy, and the light in the corner began to sway. I heard movement under the bed again, but I couldn't bring myself to look. The mattress dipped, and I felt hands, cold, bony hands, wrap around my ankles. I screamed and tried to pull away, but they were too strong. I was yanked off my feet, hitting the floor hard as I was dragged toward the bed. The dirt scraped against my skin, filling my mouth with the taste of rot. The last thing I saw before I went under was my double sitting up in the bed. Its eyes were open now, and it looked so happy to see me. When I woke again, I was back in my own apartment. My bed, my ceiling, my window letting in the soft light of morning. For a moment, I almost convinced myself it was a dream. But when I got up, there was dirt under my nails. And on the wall, scratched deep into the paint, were the words, "Your turn." I was driving home from my late shift at the warehouse, the kind of tired where your eyes burn, and the hum of the road lulls you into a trance. It was just after 2 a.m. The highway mostly empty, except for the occasional pair of headlights in the distance. That's when I saw her. A woman standing on the shoulder, thumb out, head tilted down so her face was shadowed by messy black hair. I don't pick up hitchhikers, ever. But something about the way she was standing, small, shivering in the summer night, made me slow down. My mom raised me to help people when I could. When I rolled to a stop, she didn't say a word. She just opened the passenger door and slid in. Her clothes were simple, white t-shirt, ripped jeans, but they were soaking wet. I caught a whiff of stagnant water, like a pond in the dead of summer. "You okay?" I asked. She turned her head slightly. I couldn't see her eyes, just pale skin under her hair. "Just drive," she whispered. Something in her voice was off. Too flat, like she was reading the words from a page. But I figured maybe she was in shock. I drove on. 5 minutes passed in silence, the only sound the tires on the asphalt. I tried small talk. "Where are you headed?" "Home," she said. "Where's that?" Her head turned toward me slowly, and for a split second, I swear, her face looked wrong, like her features were stretched too far apart. Then she looked forward. Again. "Keep driving." I glanced at the clock. 2:18 a.m. That's when I noticed the temperature. My car's AC was off, but the air inside was freezing. My breath fogged in front of me. "You're soaked. Do you want a towel or something?" I asked, trying to sound casual. Her voice was almost a hiss. "Don't look at me." My hands tightened on the steering wheel. I stared ahead, but my peripheral vision caught her head moving, first twitching to the side, then leaning in closer. "You shouldn't have stopped," she whispered right in my ear. I slammed on the brakes. My headlights illuminated nothing but empty road. The passenger seat was empty. My heart pounded. I pulled over, shoving the shifter into park, and looked around the car. No one. The door was still locked from the inside. I sat there for maybe a minute, trying to calm down, telling myself I must have hallucinated her from exhaustion. But then, something wet dripped onto my arm. I looked up. The roofliner above the passenger seat was soaked, a slow drop of murky water splashing onto the upholstery. My stomach knotted. That's when the radio crackled to life. I hadn't turned it on. There was no station, just static, faint voices hidden under the hiss. I leaned closer. It was her voice. "I'm still here." I froze, staring at the passenger seat. The wet imprint of someone sitting there began to form. An indent in the cushion, the seatbelt slowly pulling itself tight. The air went ice cold. I gripped the wheel, threw the car into drive, and floored it. The road blurred past, but no matter how far I drove, the clock on the dash stayed at 2:18 a.m. I didn't look at her. Couldn't. But I could hear her breathing now, slow and deliberate, like she wanted me to know she was enjoying this. Then she spoke again. "You're going the wrong way." I glanced out the window, and my blood ran cold. The highway looked wrong. No signs, no streetlights, just an endless two-lane road flanked by black forest. The moon seemed stuck in the same place above us, like time itself wasn't moving. I tried turning around. The road behind me was the same. "Where do you want me to go?" I asked, my voice cracking. "Home," she said again. I drove for what felt like hours. My gas gauge didn't move. My phone had no signal. Finally, through the trees, I saw a break in the darkness. A lake, still and black as oil, with a small wooden dock stretching into it. "Stop," she said. I did. I don't know why. The passenger door opened on its own. For the first time, I turned to look at her fully. Her hair was plastered to her face, dripping with lake water. Her skin was pale and bloated, lips tinged blue. Her eyes, they were wide and cloudy, pupils barely visible. She smiled. "You're here." Before I could move, she reached over and grabbed my arm with freezing, waterlogged fingers. The strength in her grip was unreal. She pulled, and I felt my body lurch toward her. Suddenly, everything went black. When I opened my eyes, I was standing on the dock, the lake stretching out before me. My car was gone. She stood at the edge of the dock, staring into the water. Without looking back, she stepped forward and slipped under the surface without a ripple. I should have run. Instead, I walked to the edge and looked down. Beneath the water was not a lake bottom. It was a road. The same two-lane highway I'd been driving, stretching endlessly into the black. And there, in the driver's seat of my car, was me. I woke up in my bed at 6 a.m., the alarm blaring. My clothes were dry, my car keys on the nightstand. For a while, I convinced myself it had been a dream. But when I went to leave for work, the passenger seat of my car was wet, and the seatbelt was buckled.